headed towards a post-human paradigm on planet Earth, a paradigm in which the human species, the homegrown, genetic, natural human species, is nearly exterminated from the Earth. Not completely, but certainly will become the minority in the future. The fourth industrial revolution is going to make the human species somewhat irrelevant. It will be able to operate through artificial intelligence, self-replicating machines, robots that replace human beings, and it really creates a scenario where human beings are outdated, outmoded. And so in order to catch up with artificial intelligence, the idea is that human beings need to upgrade their physiology, their biology, beginning with their cerebral cortex through Neuralink and other technologies that connect the brain directly into connect the let's call it the hardware and software of the brain into the hardware and software of technology. So it's a merging of man and machine. So I want you to understand, the robots have already surpassed the physical capabilities of the human species, and artificial intelligence has already surpassed the intellectual capability of the human species. What happens when you combine those two things together? What happens when you take AI and you stick it in the robot? I mean, you have at the very least, what you have is a template for technocratic tyranny, the likes of which we could not even imagine 10 years ago. And we will see technocratic tyranny. There's no question about it. If we don't we're already being told that humans are bad for the planet, that there's too many of us, that we're destroying the earth, climate change, and all of that. Well, add into the equation now, we're irrelevant. We're no longer needed. They don't need us, the elites, the technocrats. They don't need us to produce things anymore. In fact, they won't even need us to buy things anymore in the future, honestly. Right, abducting human beings, taking them down to the underground bases, and doing scientific experiments, integrating AI with the human brain, and cybernetics and genetic modification, genetic engineering. Yes, I think it's that dark. I think it's that grotesque.
I got chills, man.
And evil. And I think they're doing it with children, and they're doing it with adults for different experimentation. Yes, they are. Look at the evil that's in the open. Look at the rampant degeneration that's playing out in front of our eyes. What about the evil and degeneration that's playing out behind the scenes? What's good? The evil behind the curtain is always going to be orders of magnitude worse than what we see in the open. And so I'm telling you that these things are happening, and they are happening in deep underground military bases. And that gives me chills to say that, because that's one of the most dangerous things that you could probably say. What is the program? The program is the production of human alien hybrids that are indistinguishable from regular human beings. That's what they've been working toward. They've been perfecting the hybrid, and I'm drawing heavily from Dr. Jacobs' work here, and in his terms, they have been creating what he calls a hybrid, a near perfect alien human hybrid, again, practically indistinguishable from human beings. And so I think that the agenda and purpose of the Greys is clear, and I would agree with Jacob's assessment that their primary purpose, their end goal, is planetary acquisition, but they're doing it by stealth. It's conquest by stealth. It's not overt, it's covert. And what is the purpose of these hybrids, of these advanced alien human hybrids? Are they supposed to integrate into society, into the upper echelons of society? Are they supposed to rise in the ranks of the militaries of the earth? Are they supposed to rise in the political arena and become the leaders of nations? Maybe, probably, possibly. But I think that the singular objective of the Greys is planetary acquisition, and that is what the abduction program is about. They are the antithesis of the Borg from Star Trek. The Borg from Star Trek, obviously a fictional faction, the Borg from Star Trek uh, assimilate other cultures into their collective. The Greys do the antithesis. The Greys assimilate themselves into cultures and take them over covertly from within without firing a shot, so to speak. And it's a much more ingenious and insidious modus operandi. And so I don't know that I would go beyond speculating. I don't think I would speculate beyond that because there's no evidence that the Greys are interested in souls. Now, I will say this. The late Dr. Carla Turner wrote extensively about a device that showed up in a lot of the abductions interviews that she conducted. It's a black box. You've probably heard this, that sometimes is positioned at the top of an abductee's head as they're laying prone on the table, on their back. And the abductee will often describe the sensation of being sucked out of their body.
All right, welcome to Beyond the Forbidden. Today on the show, we got Timothy Alberino. Been following his work for several years now. Finally, I got him on the show. I've been meaning to try to get him on the show a couple years ago, but just, I don't know, things happen, but it doesn't matter because I got him now. Timothy Alberino, welcome to Beyond the Forbidden. How you doing, man?
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Doing fine.
So normally I like everybody to throw everything out in the beginning, like your book, or books, your website, social medias, and where people can find you and everything else at the beginning instead of, because a lot of people do it at the end. Might as well do it in the beginning, you know?
Well, you can find me on my website, timothyalberino.com, on Twitter and Instagram. My handle is just Timothy Alberino, no spaces or dots or underscores between my first and last name. I'm on YouTube, Timothy Alberino. I'm the only Timothy Alberino you're going to find, most likely. So I wrote a book called Birthright, which is you can get it on Amazon.com. Here's the book here. You can get it on Amazon.com. You can get it on Walmart.com, BarnesandNoble.com. That's pretty much it.
So, like I said before the show, I've been following you for several years now, but I don't really know when exactly did you break out, I guess. Like what was it that broke you out? Because I know you've been pretty much hot on the scene with, man, ancient mysteries, paranormal, AI, Nephilim, a bunch of different topics. I would say maybe 2018, 19 is when I maybe came across your work, I believe, something like that. Or maybe 8 years ago, whenever 8 years ago was. I remember watching the interview, I don't know, probably back in 2015, 16, something like that.
I did. I moved to Bozeman, Montana some years ago, maybe 8, 9 years ago. And I started a company with Steve Quayle called Gen 6 Productions. And Steve and I produced a documentary film series called True Legends. And we did some other things together. And I suppose that would be when I entered the arena, so to speak. And I've just been investigating all kinds of things ever since then, traveling all over the place, investigating megaliths, giants, aspects of ufology, alien abductions, all kinds of things, bizarre, fringe, you might say, since then. So I think maybe that answers your question.
Oh yeah. How long did you always have an interest in these topics? Like, or which ones in particular did you have an interest in? Like with me, people that's been following me for a while over the years, I guess mine was first maybe UFOs and like basic conspiracies like JFK and things like that. Because growing up, well, I was born in '86, but product of the '90s. That's when I mostly remember, and of course the 2000s. But in the '90s, my grandfather, he was a Pan Am American pilot, and he was also in the Cold War. pilot in the Cold War also. But he's the one that got me interested in the UFO topic. He used to tell me about. We would sit down. He had just like your cigar, but he had a pipe though. He did cigars every now and then. He had his pipe, the best smell in the world, man. The best smell. Sometimes I just want to have some burning just so I can like get that reminisce whenever I was with my grandfather. Um, but yeah, he's the one that woke me up pretty much in the 90s to like a lot of things, paranormal, fringe, things like that. We used to watch a lot of documentaries. But '06 is whenever my true awakening to how this BS reality that we live in, everything's not quite what it seems. The world's far more strange, mysterious than what it seems. In '06, that's when I came back from basic and AIT. But yeah, go ahead and like how far back can we go with the Timothy Alberino, like in your interest in some of these subjects?
When I dropped out of high school, moved to the Amazon. That's when my interest in all of these things began, really, gradually over the years. But that would be the turning point in my life when I moved to the Amazon basin in Peru.
Hmm. So you've been pretty much all over, huh?
All over Peru?
Or all over the world.
I've been in several different parts of the world. I spent a lot of time in South America.
Uh,
It depends, it depends what I'm doing. If I'm making a film or if I'm going to investigate something, it just depends. Um, but most of my time I've spent in Peru.
I gotcha. Did you ever like do any research or anything about like the Nazi connection down there in South America?
You mean Argentina?
Argentina, yeah.
Yeah, I've familiarized myself with that theory. Um, Certainly, there was a lot of sympathy for the Nazi Party in Argentina and foothold in Argentina. U-boats surfaced on the shores of Argentina. There's a whole lot of lore, and I would go so far as to say historical fact regarding the Nazis in Argentina. Now, whether Adolf Hitler was actually living there, it's hard for me to. I don't doubt it. I certainly don't doubt it. I think there's a very good argument to be made for it. But if you read Mein Kampf, which I have, and if you really study Hitler's personality and his dedication to his ideology, it's hard for me to contemplate him wanting to live in a world in which he was no longer the leader of the Nazi Party and which he no longer had a military at his disposal or political power. I think a guy like Hitler might prefer death to that kind of a subsistence,
Mhm.
living in obscurity in Argentina without any sort of power, without any kind of goal. Doesn't seem like something that a man like Hitler something that would appeal to a man like Hitler. But again, I don't deny that he was in Argentina, that he escaped. I don't deny that at all. It's a big question mark for me. It doesn't seem to fit his character.
Do you think that, and we're not going to stay on the Nazis at all. I actually want to possibly tie in like the alien phenomena with maybe possibly, I don't know, demonic entities or whatever you want to call it, technology and artificial intelligence. I feel like there's a connection there somewhere. But
Mhm.
with Nazi Germany, do you think that they actually had some type of technology advance, some type of crazy technology that they were channeling from the other side?
They were working on, I think, remarkable technologies like their Glotch, the Nazi bell,
Mhm.
um, which who knows what that was exactly, but they had schematics for what we would call flying saucers. I think that they were in contact with somebody, probably in my mind, most probably the Greys, but I don't know. I mean, they had their Vril society, and they believed that this Vril race existed beneath the earth, in the bowels of the earth. And of course, they were traveling all over the world on expeditions looking for the Spear of Longitus, looking for the Holy Grail, looking for these mythical artifacts. So this is all a function of the occult. You cannot separate the occult from the Nazi Party. It's at the heart of the Nazi Party. Hitler himself probably wasn't as steeped in the occult as his lieutenants, but he was sympathetic to it, and certainly believed in the master race, certainly believed in some of that ancient mythology, German mythology, and uh, was undoubtedly engaged in the project of trying to breed the master race. Um, and I think that, yes, the possibility exists. And in fact, I would say that it's plausible that the Nazis were some element of the Nazis, some element of the occult within the Nazi Party, had made contact with non-human entities who were giving them information regarding weapon systems, regarding perhaps even propulsion systems that they were attempting to develop. Now, they certainly didn't have any of that technology because they would have used it. The Nazis had a problem. The biggest problem that the Nazis had during the war was they could not stop our bombers from devastating their cities, from incinerating their cities. That was the problem. And so the Nazis had a solution to it. Albert Speer was part of this, but they enacted this solution too late. If they would have enacted this solution earlier, they could have won the war, and that is that they began to move their manufacturing underground. They began to move their critical infrastructure and manufacturing underground. They were building deep underground military bases. The Todt organization was building these bases for the Nazis. We, by the way, through Operation Paperclip, brought over the members of the Todt organization and began to build our own deep underground military bases in the Nazi style. But if Hitler would have reacted sooner and would have had the foresight to realize that the Nazi Air Force was inept and would not be able to stop the combined Air Force might of Great Britain and the United States, he would have moved his operations, his manufacturing operations underground sooner. Had he done that, he could have developed some of these weapons, and I think he could have won the war. But we bombed the Nazis into oblivion. That's how we won the war. The bombing of Dresden, for example. We bombed civilian targets, and it was so terrible. And this is just sort of a side note that I often contemplate. It was so terrible. We incinerated these cities, and they generated so much heat. These incendiary bombs that we dropped on these cities, that people would jump into the river, into the lake to try and escape the heat, and they would be boiled alive.
That kind of reminds me of the Indian Mahabharata.
Yeah, these were not atomic weapons. We were just dropping incendiary bombs, and so we defeated Hitler through our bombing campaigns, and they were indiscriminate. Our bombing campaigns. I mean, we destroyed villages, cities indiscriminately. We were not targeting military. We were not targeting exclusively military installations or manufacturing installations. Rather, it was a scorched earth tactic, and we were just burning the German cities to the ground. So, had Hitler anticipated this, I don't think he thought that Western civilizations would do that. Although, Hitler was, the SS was exterminating many Russians on the Russian front, on the Eastern Front. We've all seen the images, lining up civilians and shooting them in the back of the head, killing thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Russian civilians, Jews and otherwise. So I don't think that Hitler thought that we would retaliate in kind. I don't think he thought we had the guts for it. Having said that, you know, if again, to reiterate, if he would have moved his manufacturing underground earlier, I think he could have developed some of these weapons. Maybe they did have some of the prototypes in Antarctica. They certainly had bases, U-boat bases in Antarctica. They could have perhaps brought some of these projects to fruition and had some of these amazing weapons. Obviously, they were very close to being able to deploy warheads, to be able to get rockets in orbit and then deploy warheads from orbit, which would have changed the balance of power as well. So they were very close. And we all know that the Nazis were on the cusp of creating the atomic bomb. They're very, very close to that. So you combine all these things together, once again, to reiterate the point, had Hitler moved all of this underground, moved all of this, you can't, move the rocket projects underground necessarily. You can move some of the infrastructure, but had he had the foresight, and had the Luftwaffe not utterly failed to protect the skies over Germany, Hitler would have won. And we would have seen some of these remarkable weapons, these Wunder, whatever they're called, I can't remember the word in German, the Wonder weapons.
Yeah. And you said something well said, Tim. And you said something that, like I just mentioned, or before that question, that kind of stuck out. And this is how I kind of want to prelude into this. You can't separate, I believe what you said, you can't separate the occult from the Nazi party or something like that. And that's true. But I also believe, Tim, that you can't separate the occult technically from the alien phenomena, artificial intelligence, transhumanism.
That's true.
I believe everything kind of ties in to some way or faction. So
I think you're correct. I would say that there's degrees of verity to that statement. Let's say the occult is always involved. And the occult is the function of the occult is to make contact with other worldly entities, non-human entities. That's the primary function of the occult, is to interface with non-human intelligences. That's the purpose of the occult. Mm-hmm. And to gather, to obtain information, secret information from those sources. And so I would agree that the occult is at the heart of so many of these issues. Certainly, you cannot separate the occult from the Nazi Party.
Exactly. And let me see. So I'm trying to pull up a few quotes because I got several quotes from your book, Birthright. So let me see here. I believe this is from your book. I don't know why I did not freaking put the chapter. Did not put the chapter. Man, that's a mistake on my part. So, man. Anyways, so here we go. The consumption, the consummation of the Human Genome Project marked the beginning of the end of humanity as we know it. But mankind's transformation would not occur overnight. Like all significant technological breakthroughs in the modern age, human genetic engineering would at first progress at an almost imperceptible pace until the impetus of necessity and profit compelled momentous evolution. A caterpillar encrusted in his cocoon may appear to be in a state of inactivity, but beneath the chrysalis surface, dramatic change is nevertheless occurring. Over the last several decades, the development of emerging technologies has been advancing at a breakneck speed along the upsurge of an exponential growth curve. And he goes on to say, among these technologies, there are 4 whose imminent convergence is predicted to catalyze what analysts are calling the posthuman revolution. Man, kind of gives me goosebumps. And um, I got, I don't have the physical copy. I do have the Kindle version. I will get the physical copy. I believe in physical copies. I have them everywhere. But what chapter was that? Because I usually tell people what chapter that is
That would
in.
be the chapter on transhumanism. I believe that would be the
Yeah,
chapter on transhumanism, called the posthuman paradigm.
that I
It's
think
really
that's
hard.
it.
It's a chapter on posthumanism. Um,
That's
yeah.
it. But well said. And so, but like I said, everything kind of fits into the puzzle like a one big jigsaw puzzle. What do you think the reason and or agenda is for the technological leap within the past 100 years is? And I guess what do you think the end game is in your opinion? With
Well,
this, I guess with this burst in technology, I would say at least
all of this
since the
is
19th
headed
century.
towards all of this is headed towards a post-human paradigm on planet Earth, a paradigm in which the human species, the homegrown genetic natural human species, is nearly exterminated from the earth. Not completely, but certainly will become the minority in the future. And posthumanism involves all kinds of biological technologies as well as artificial intelligence. It's the amalgamation of all of these technologies that is going to give rise to a post-human apocalypse, really. A scenario that I believe is illustrated in the book of Revelation. But we have and have had for several decades a host of different technologies that have been developing along the exponential girth, along along an exponential growth curve. In other words, their capacity has been doubling and tripling every year. The technology has been accelerating along this exponential growth curve model. Ray Kurzweil talks about this quite a lot. And it's so you have, for example, you have genetic engineering, you have nanotechnology, you have robotics, you have artificial intelligence, um, and a handful of other technologies that are progressing concurrently, and they're currently converging. They're presently converging, even as we speak. These technologies are coming together. When you take any of these technologies, such as nanotechnology, and you plug in artificial intelligence, you greatly enhance the capability of that technology. So,
I just
artificial
interviewed Alana
intelligence,
Freeland a couple days ago. Yeah, it was,
yeah, artificial intelligence. Right now, we're undergoing a tremendous transformation in society. Congress is playing with the idea of pumping the brakes on artificial intelligence, but it's not just artificial intelligence. It's not just AI. It's all these other technologies that are developing, as I said, concurrently at breakneck speed. You can't stop this momentum. It's impossible. Even if the United States pumps the brakes on artificial intelligence, China's not going to do that. AI can make calculations much faster than human beings can make calculations. So the application for warfare is frightening, frankly. Um, we're going to be turning over much of our human applications in society to artificial intelligence, little by little. Even beginning on the most fundamental level, our brick and mortar stores, the way that those operate, are going to be turned over to artificial intelligence. You're going to have rarely a human being working in one of those in a brick and mortar store anymore, especially grocery stores and fast food restaurants. That's where it's going to start, and already has started. You might have one human being in the building just to make sure that the everything is operating properly, and that's not going to be a grocery bagger. That's going to be a robotics engineer or something like that, or a programmer, software engineer, somebody who can correct errors in the software and the AI. or in the robotics. And so gradually, much of our society is going to be turned over to artificial intelligence. Um, the human species is, and this is the way that Elon Musk is looking at it, is going to have to upgrade itself if it's going to compete with artificial intelligence and even be relevant for the future. Um, I've said this on several occasions, and I think that people need to realize that the fourth industrial revolution that Klaus Schwab talks about at the World Economic Forum is a revolution that does not require many human beings, which is quite astounding, because the first industrial revolution needed millions of human beings to be involved in manufacturing. Yeah, we had the industrialized mechanics. We had the machines that we created to be able to industrialize industries, many different industries, such as agriculture, for example, manufacturing. But these technologies required human beings to be working on the conveyor belts, to be doing all sorts of things. We had to feed the raw materials into the machines. We had to process. We had to package. We had to do all of this. And it required a large human workforce in order to succeed. The first industrial revolution, it was the engine of the industrial revolution was the human workforce. In fact, famously, during the first industrial revolution, or I should say infamously, or rather, one of the most tragic byproducts of the industrial revolution was so many children, young children, who lost their childhoods because they had to work in factories. There's extreme poverty, and the factories would employ children, and I'm talking 5, 6, 7-year-olds who would work 8, 10 hours a day, because there was such a need for human involvement, human, let's say, human capital was required to make the first industrial revolution work. Well, that's not true anymore for the fourth industrial revolution. It does not require that kind of involvement from human beings. It's artificial intelligence. In fact, it's the opposite. The fourth industrial revolution is going to make the human species somewhat irrelevant. It will be able to operate through artificial intelligence, self-replicating machines, robots that replace human beings, and it really creates a scenario where human beings are outdated, outmoded. And so in order to catch up with artificial intelligence, the idea is that human beings need to upgrade their physiology, their biology, beginning with their cerebral cortex through Neuralink and other technologies that connect the brain directly into connect the let's call it the hardware and software of the brain into the hardware and software of technology. So it's a merging of man and machine. Interestingly enough, this is called cyborg. I just lost the term for it, the exact term for it. I want to call it
Cybogenics.
No, it's there's a I almost called it cyborg theology. It's a philosophy.
What it is.
Let's call it cyborg philosophy. I can't remember the exact terminology for it that was being propagated in the universities years ago, and then and the philosophy was preparing at the university level, was preparing intellectuals for the merging of men and machines. Cyborg theory was preparing humanity, was created in anticipation of mankind merging with machines and blurring the line between human and cyborg, for example. And we are now on the cusp of this reality. So I know that, let's be specific to Neuralink. Neuralink is going to begin human trials very shortly. And once that begins, once you have a safe interface mechanism between the brain and technology, the brain and the internet, for example, of those who receive this upgrade will be vastly more intelligent than the rest of us. And the jobs that will be available in the future will only be available to people who are upgrading their biology, because the rest of us are practically irrelevant. We won't be able to keep up with artificial intelligence. And so, and certainly with those who are integrating themselves.
Is that why Elon Musk thinks we need a halt on it right now? Because well, what?
Yes, because artificial intelligence is going to run away. I mean, think about.
I didn't mean to interrupt you on that.
It's going to eliminate many jobs very, very quickly. And I'm not just talking about blue collar jobs. I'm not talking about the teenagers working at McDonald's. I'm talking about creative jobs. We're talking about screenwriters. We're talking about artists. We're talking about engineers. Gone. Nobody will be able to compete with artificial intelligence in any of those realms. Artificial intelligence will be able to write better scripts for movies because it's going to be pulling from the collective creative. What's the word I'm looking for here? Let's call it the creative force of humanity collectively, because it's tapped into social media, it's tapped into the internet, all facets of the internet.
The Internet of Things is what they call it, the Internet of Things or something like that.
Yeah, the intellectual, that's what I meant. The collective intellectual property is what I wanted to say of the human species. It's tapping into that. And it's tapping into that creativity because it's interfacing through social media. We are interfacing with artificial intelligence. And so it's learning what humans like. It's learning to mimic our creativity. And it already can outdo us in terms of concept art. I mean, we all know by now that you can go to Midjourney, for example, on Discord and type in, people are typing in all the time now, Donald Trump, being arrested and in the orange jumpsuit, and it's pumping out these incredibly detailed pictures, images, and it does it in a matter of seconds, 15, 30 seconds. You can get any kind of image you can imagine.
Have you looked at Chat GPT?
Yes, I played.
Oh my gosh.
Like Chat GPT and also the Midjourney image generating artificial intelligence. And my initial thought was, this is the end of human intellectual property. The artificial intelligence is going to completely replace human creativity, and already is. So all these creative jobs are gone.
And I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm getting kind of fired. You fire me up here because these are scary times, trying times. And imagine with just ChatGPT. I'm not talking about everything else. But the other ones too. That's what's available in the public domain. Like, imagine what they have with artificial intelligence in the dark world that's covered in a veil of secrecy.
Right. And the reason,
like, you know what I
mean? The reason why it's in the public domain is because it's a toddler. It has to learn. And so by interacting with us, it's learning. It's learning our preferences. It's learning our fears, our hopes. It's learning to mimic our intelligence and our creativity. And so all of these jobs, like writing articles, for example, for a newspaper or for, a newspaper, that's old hat, writing articles on social media now, that's going to be totally taken over by AI. I mean, how can you compete? The AI will be able to write a perfect article, no spelling errors, perfect grammar, and much better articulated than any human being, and be able to do it in 10 seconds. So it's over. We've crossed the proverbial Rubicon. There's no turning back. AI is here to stay, and it is going to make human beings irrelevant. And so posthumanism is inevitable because it's going to drive the need for the human species to forcibly evolve. That's called directed evolution. Imagine, gain of function that we've been playing with in the Wuhan lab to create coronavirus. Imagine gain of function for human beings. Gain of function intellectually speaking, gain of function physically speaking, life extension. Ultimately, ultimately we are going to evolve out of Adam by both necessity and desire to become like the gods, who are going to show up at some point. But this is where we are headed. This is not a conjecture, as you well know. This is current reality. Now, when I wrote these things in my book, none of this was around really in the public view yet.
No.
And that was just in 2020. I published the book. Since 2020, we now have Chat GPT. We now have AI image generating software. We now have robotics that are becoming perfected to the level where they're already able to surpass human capabilities in terms of our physical capabilities. And what I'm referencing here is the Boston Dynamics robots that are humanoid, that are already, doing parkour, that are already picking up guns and shooting perfect bullseyes at ranges. These robots have already surpassed. So I want you to understand, the robots have already surpassed the physical capabilities of the human species, and artificial intelligence has already surpassed the intellectual capability of the human species. What happens when you combine those two things together? What happens when you take AI and you stick it in the robot? I mean, you have at the very least, what you have is a template for technocratic tyranny, the likes of which we could not even imagine 10 years ago. And we will see technocratic tyranny. There's no question about it. If we don't see, we're already being told that humans are bad for the planet, that there's too many of us, that we're destroying the earth, climate change, and all of that. Well, add into the equation now, we're irrelevant. We're no longer needed. They don't need us, the elites, the technocrats. They don't need us to produce things anymore. In fact, they won't even need us to buy things anymore in the future, honestly. So if the consumer is no longer necessary, and if the human workforce is no longer necessary, then what good is the human species in the mind of the technocrat? The human species that's like a plague on planet Earth. What good are we? No, we're no good at all. In fact, we need to be eradicated. We need to be controlled. The population needs to be reduced to a very small, manageable population just to preserve the human species, while the technocrats govern the earth through technology. That's where we are. This is not a science fiction anymore. This is where we are, and it's only going to accelerate into the future. And in my book, I expound on why I believe these things are happening, what the end goal is, and it has to do with, in a nutshell, it has to do with humanity losing our birthright on earth. We will no longer have the authority to govern the earth that was given to us by God, because we will transition out of Adam and into a posthuman condition, and therefore thereby forfeit our birthright, which is dominion of the earth. And it's at its core, you talked about the occult. At its core, the machinations of the technocratic elite and the things that are unfolding on the earth, presently unfolding on the earth, are Luciferian.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, man. Your knowledge on this, I know you talked about it in your book, but Tim, man, I would love to see you put this down, like just a book on this, like straight up just transhumanism, genetic engineering, post. You talk about it in your book, but man, your knowledge on this, I've heard you talk about it before, but just hearing you now, like through the cosmic airways here, man, I would love to see everything that in that brain of yours, like every chapter is some type of facet of this, because these are definitely trying times that we live in. And you talked about something a while ago. I forgot what you said. And I had a note here. So can artificial intelligence ever truly replicate human emotions and what it truly means to be human? Or do our
it's just going to mimic human. I mean, let's put it this way.
Well, I had more on that, but
if you can mimic human emotion, which artificial intelligence can, if you can mimic it, and of course it's getting better all the time. If you can mimic human intelligence, if you can mimic human creativity, then really what distinguishes you from a human being? Obviously, AI is not human, but for all intents and purposes, you won't know in the future if you're interacting with a human being or AI. You won't know.
Right.
In fact, you won't know if the videos you're watching or the images you're viewing were created by a human being or completely by artificial intelligence. Listen, I guarantee you that somebody out there is already thinking about how to use artificial intelligence to produce movies. Photorealistic movies from A to Z, every aspect of production basically being done for free to produce a movie. The music, the every scene, every camera angle. It is well within the bounds of AI right now to do that. Right now, we are moving into
one kid
uncharted.
already killed themselves over this.
We're moving into uncharted territory. We are a generation, okay, that will see the end of humanity. And I don't and I don't believe that the end of humanity is coming in the next 10 years, but we're going to see the beginning of the end of the human species. The transhumanist World Economic Forum's prophet, because that's really what his function is for the World Economic Forum. Yuval Noah Harari is going around saying all over the world that within 1 to 200 years, the human species is gone. There will be no more human beings left on planet Earth. Now, I predicted that in my book, the exact same time frame before Harari, or at least before I had ever heard Harari make that statement, because had I known he was making that statement, I would have included it in my book. But I made that prognostication based on the time frame of when I believe the end of the age is coming. And I believe very strongly that the end of the age is 1 to 200 years off, because an age is 2,160 years, and we're in the age of Pisces, which corresponded to the birth of Christ, which took place around 4 BC. So we are right in that time frame. So the very end of the age of Pisces literally corresponds to Harari's prediction that there will be no more human beings left on the earth. Now, let me say that there will be human beings left on the earth, because there's always going to be a remnant. There's always going to be a resistance. You will have humanity still alive, but we will be in the minority. We will be in the minority. Most of humanity will transition into a post-human condition, and the dominion of the earth, the birthright of Adam, it's corporate. It doesn't just belong to the good guys. It belongs to all of humanity, good, bad, or indifferent. It's corporate. And so if you have the majority of the human species relinquishing their birthright, then you have a wholesale relinquishment of the birthright of Adam on earth. And see, that's the end game. And that's why in the book of Revelation, you have this character who we call the Antichrist, the beast, who arises in the earth. And the Bible says, the book of Revelation says, that he is permitted to rule for a while. Why? Because he is authorized to do so. I don't believe he's going to be fully human. He's going to be hybrid, and he will usurp the dominion of Adam on earth for a time. And what is the purpose of this usurpation? It is to make war with God. Nothing less than Armageddon, which is war with God, war with Christ returning to the earth. That's the end game. And there's no question about that. No question about that. What do you see arising in the earth right now? What is the spirit, the general spirit of the age? Is Antichrist. That's what the spirit is. It is anti everything that the order of creation, everything that God has established and put into place is being challenged and defied, because we're moving from denial to defiance. We're moving from atheism, the denial of God, to apotheotheism, the open defiance of God. That's the difference. Apotheotheism is a term that I coined in my book. And what it is the amalgam of apotheosis, which is the deification of mankind, and deism, which is a belief in the gods. And so when you take when you take apotheosis, the deification of man, and you blend it with a belief in the gods, what you have is a religion which declares the gods exist and we shall become like them. And when I say the gods exist, I don't mean Zeus, I don't mean Jupiter, I don't mean the gods of the Greeks and Romans and Babylonians. I'm talking about extraterrestrial entities, advanced extraterrestrial entities who make an appearance and who people, for all intents and purposes, they will be gods in comparison to us because of their technology, because of their superior physiology. And we will be invited to become like them. It's full circle all the way back to the Garden of Eden. You shall be like the gods. That was the original temptation of the Garden of Eden, and it will be the final temptation for mankind. We're going to sell our birthright for a bowl of stew, and that bowl of stew is life extension. It's the eradication of genetic diseases.
Crickets.
It's artificial intelligence. It's interfacing with AI through our brain, interfacing with the internet through our brain. It's virtual reality, being able to interface with virtual reality. Imagine this right now. See, right now we put on the Oculus on our heads or some other VR device to interface with a virtual world. Well, in the future, that won't be the case. In the future, your brain will be interfacing with a virtual world. You will literally be able to inhabit a virtual world in your mind, touch it, smell it, taste it, because it will be directly interfacing with your cerebral cortex. So you're going to have masses of human beings who are living most of their reality on Earth in the virtual world, in conjunction with all these other things that are unfolding on the Earth. Robots will be patrolling our streets instead of police officers. That's done. That's done. Okay. Why? What is the big deal in the United States right now with the left? Defund the police. We don't want biased, racist police out there. Well, the ultimate solution to that is going to be to replace the police with robots. And robots will be much more efficient than police officers, by the way. And you won't have to pay them. You see, the city won't have to pay the robots. It's a one-time, they'll have to pay somebody they'll have to pay a team of engineers to maintenance them, but that's it. You see, that's why human beings are going to become irrelevant for the future, for the industry of the future. We are on the cusp of total irrelevance and annihilation of the human species. Of course, again, let me add the caveat. No, I do not believe that every human being will be gone. I think that there will be a remnant. There will be those who resist. It will be very much like, well, maybe not very much like, but perhaps something like the Terminator films, in which you have this human resistance that's resisting the dominance of AI and the robots. That resistance, we are the resistance, is literally going to be a reality in the future. There will be homegrown human beings, factions of human beings from different walks of life, different religions, different backgrounds. Many, many of them will be Christians, but not exclusively Christians, who will resist the transition into a post-human condition. They will resist it at all costs and will do whatever they have to do to survive outside of the system, because you won't be able to participate in that system if you don't have the upgrades. You literally will not be able to participate, because if you're not interfacing with the internet through your cerebral cortex, and you don't have all of the biological upgrades, and you don't have all of the biometrics that allows you to access your bank account, for example, you simply you're opting out. You're opting out of society at that point and living, who knows how, living like the Amish, I guess. But that is the reality of the future. There's no stopping it. This is not science fiction. It's already beginning to unfold. We haven't even discussed the genetic revolution, which is coming and is already underway to some extent. And, there will be pandemics in the future which will exclusively affect, and I might add target, regular human beings. And the solution to these pandemics will be to upgrade your genome. And I warned about that, by the way. I left it I think maybe this was providential. I warned about that. I think back in, I don't remember, it was maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. On my YouTube channel, you can see there's a YouTube video called Ebola in the Days of Noah, in which I warned long before COVID that my fear was not the diseases. My fear was the vaccines that would incorporate genetic modification technology. And I think that was quite prescient way back then. And so all of this is coming to fruition. We're seeing it unfold. The demolition of the current order is necessary. That's why we're seeing the controlled demolition of America. And basically, what we're going to see in the future that will dominate the geopolitical landscape is a technocratic, one world government. And everybody knows, the New World Order, the one world government. Well, that's because the one world government is and has always been the goal of these occultists and of these technocratic elite. And now they have the tools to do it, and they'll just continue to manufacture crises that will increasingly convince the nations that we need to consolidate political and military power. And what kind of crises? There's two kinds of crises that will accelerate this. There's three, actually. The first one is artificial intelligence, which we're dealing with right now. The second is extraterrestrial incursion, an alien threat. And the third crisis is a cataclysm, some kind of a natural cataclysm, be it a comet, be it
or weather modification,
pole shift, something like that. Any one of those three things, or all of those three things together, are going to require a global response. Climate change is this is just the opening salvo to where all of this is going. Climate change is going to go away very quickly, and it's going to be replaced with these other crises, which are going to be immediate threats, and real threats, by the way. The alien threat, which I talk about in my book, is going to be a clear and present danger and is going to require a global response. And the only way you can sufficiently have a global response is some kind of a global governing body that overrides the nation state. Now, how close are we to that? I would say we are probably 10, 20 years away from that. People scoff and they get angry when they hear me say that it's not going to happen tomorrow. But you have to approach this logically, and you have to understand that the technologies require time to develop, to mature. They require time. It's not ready yet.
David Icke calls it the totalitarian tiptoe.
That's right.
The drip drip method, because if you or the boiling frog syndrome, and you was talking about microchips. I also have a quote from, I don't believe in all of David Icke's stuff, but a lot of his material is very good. The Biggest Secret, which was what, 99, 2000, 01 or something like that. But he says Illuminati controlled Princeton University was involved in the development of the very chip along with the New Jersey Institute of Technology. Dr. Peter Zhou, Zhou, was the chief scientist at digitalangel.net, Incorporated, a wholly owned subsidiary of Applied Digital. He stresses the benefits for people becoming human robots connected to a satellite, hence Neuralink. And he said, and this was back 25 years ago, and he said he was excited about his chip's ability to save lives by monitoring medical conditions and giving an exact location to rescue services. I predicted many years ago that this would be one of the ways they would sell the chip to people when the time came for its introduction. I also said that another marketing ruse would be to stress that if you microchip your children, you would always know where they were. This is indeed being used now after the success of the Chip Your Dog and You'll Never Lose Him campaign that was a part of the totalitarian, here it is, tiptoe to microchip people. The more children that go missing or murdered, and the more they promote the danger of pedophiles in the community, the more likely parents are to be frightened into microchipping their kids. David Icke, The Biggest Secret.
Right. We're way beyond chips at this point.
Exactly.
We're going to going to pole vault over the whole chip thing straight into the cerebral cortex interface with technology. It's much more advanced than that. I mean, everybody thought the RFID chips and stuff was going to be the big deal, and the truth is that we are so far beyond that at this point.
I don't think he had a reference point though back then. The only reference point then was, I guess, microchip. If something like Neuralink, what it was involved then, or something similar like this brain to computer interface, whatever, I'm sure he would have put some kind of connection to that.
Well, certainly Ike is a very intelligent man, and I think that he's been absolutely correct on many of these things that he foresaw coming down the pike. As has Alex Jones been correct about many of the things that he prognosticated years and years ago.
Yep. And so with that said, with what I read about with that quote from The Biggest Secret, this is another tool in the dystopian toolbox that is being used. This is how to implement this type of technology to the public. When people are in a constant state of fear, the people become more easily controlled and manipulated to where the manipulators in the shadows can steer humanity in whatever direction they wish. And to us, we are almost in a trance-like state while being in a subconscious state of Stockholm syndrome, where we do not see that we are being steered into this dystopian AI future while ever having a psychological bond with these 1%er puppet masters. What's your thoughts on that?
I agree. That would be the technocratic elite. You see, technocrats have something that no one else has ever had, nor the tyrants in human history. They have the agency of advanced technology, and they have a totally complicit and technology addicted populace who they can bend at their will. Richard Dolan, the ufologist, very good ufologist, coined the phrase breakaway civilization many years ago to describe what he believes is this technocratic elite who have been in possession of technology that is thousands of years, certainly hundreds of years in advance of what we have now, because of crash retrievals and reverse engineering alien technology, that this group of people have evolved, technologically speaking, so far beyond the rest of us that they constitute a new society, a breakaway society. And let's assume for a moment that this is true, that we've recovered alien technology, reverse engineered it, and have been able to manufacture it, some of it at least, and have done so in secret, technologies that are far beyond anything that we have today, not just propulsion technologies, all different kinds of technologies that we haven't even contemplated, right, in society. And these individuals have been developing this technology behind the scenes, and so they have cures for all kinds of diseases. They have exotic propulsion systems. Who knows what they would have? I mean, it's conceivable that if this is the case, that these individuals could already own real estate on the surface of Mars. I mean, these individuals could have bases, on the moon. They could have underground cities with advanced technology. And I do believe there's truth to that idea of a breakaway civilization. And those are the people, by the way, who I'm calling the technocratic elite. When I say technocratic elite, I'm talking about individuals who are in possession of technology that far exceeds anything we can even imagine. And then also will be able to wield and dominate with the kind of technologies we see developing now, such as, again, to illustrate, take the Boston Dynamics robots that can do parkour, right? Backflips and run around, and you push them, and they have a balancing system and much stronger than we are. And take artificial intelligence that's being developed right now and stick that artificial intelligence into that robot. That's where we're going. I mean, you can imagine.
They may already have it. They may already have it in the black world, maybe.
In the future, all of our aircraft will be piloted remotely by artificial intelligence. It's all going to be drones. All of it. There will be no more human pilots. And you won't even have pilots operating the drones like we do now with the Predator drones. No, because those pilots can't make decisions as fast as AI. So it will be AI piloting the drones. It will be AI piloting the tanks. And if there's going to be any kind of quote unquote people on the battlefield, it's going to be robots, not going to be human beings. Robots, by the way, can operate in space. So
I have a question that's coming up, but I don't want to ask it just yet. But what if this AI, Tim? What if this AI they create that they become so sentient that they create their own virus or whatever, and they implement it worldwide?
I don't believe AI will ever make decisions that are not directed by human beings. There's no impetus. There's no purpose. AI doesn't have a purpose. It doesn't have an impetus. It doesn't have a why. That's what's missing from the AI.
What if these dystopian elites, these technocratic dystopian elites, they somehow, maybe that's the reason why so many people they go missing in these national parks, that people are being abducted by let's say the military abductions or whatever case may be, in these deep underground military bases.
Yes, I think that's what's happening.
What if they are they're experimenting on us because they are trying to somehow learn the soul, the consciousness,
or they're just using, or they're already and have been for decades taking,
and they want to transplant.
That's right, abducting human beings, taking them down to the underground bases, and doing scientific experiments, integrating AI with the human brain and cybernetics and genetic modification, genetic engineering. Yes, I think it's that dark. I think it's that grotesque.
Got chills, man.
And evil. And I think they're doing it with children, and they're doing it with adults for different experimentation. Yes, they are. Look at the evil that's in the open. Look at the rampant degeneration that's playing out in front of our eyes. What about the evil and degeneration that's playing out behind the scenes? What's good? The evil behind the curtain is always going to be orders of magnitude worse than what we see in the open. And so I'm telling you that these things are happening, and they are happening in deep underground military bases. And that gives me chills to say that, because it's one of the most dangerous things that you could probably say.
Do you think they'll ever reach that full singularity where they can get that consciousness that they're experimenting with?
I don't think a machine can be conscious. A machine can only mimic. It can mimic anything, any emotion. It can mimic us. But see, consciousness, there's an impetus, there's a purpose to consciousness.
Is that why they need hybrids, though? Is that why they need hybrids?
Well, consider this. Every biological creature that exists on Earth naturally, in nature, has a purpose. And they all have an impetus. That impetus is to reproduce. That impetus is to survive, propagate. When it comes to the higher conscious creatures like apes and humans, elephants, the purpose goes a little bit beyond just reproduction. There's emotional connections, there's empathy, right? And this is the impetus that drives living creatures, the impetus that was installed into this software, this biological software, by God from the beginning, so that life can flourish. And as it pertains to human beings, our purpose goes beyond just flourishing on the earth. Our purpose originally was to interface and have fellowship with God. Okay, so that separates us from the apes, for example. But artificial intelligence has no purpose in and of itself. It has no impetus. There is no life force in artificial intelligence. The impetus, the purpose, has to be provided by somebody else. And so I don't believe that a machine can gain consciousness in the sense that it has its own purpose, its own self-worth, its own understanding of why it exists. That will always have to be provided by somebody else, by an intelligence that is not machine-like, that is not mechanical, but that is rather biological in origin, and that has that spark of life, that divine spark of life, which a machine does not. Now, for all intents and purposes, you won't be able to tell the difference between AI and human consciousness. You won't. But I do not believe that AI will ever be innately conscious like we are. But again, it will mimic consciousness that it will almost be irrelevant. The question will almost be irrelevant because it will be able to mimic human consciousness.
Can it mimic it to the point of possibly writing code? Not being
Well,
not
if
to
somebody
where
knows,
it gives the world's computers and everything else in the world some type of virus, and we're in that dystopian nightmare.
if human beings tell it to do that, if human beings teach it to do that, then it will. The one of the hallmarks of the singularity is that artificial intelligence will be able to replicate itself. In other words, robots will be able to build robots, and artificial intelligence will replicate itself, reproduce. Right? We can look at it in that way. We're very close to that. Robots can build robots already, and not only build robots but improve on the design constantly, continually. Add in nanotechnology into this equation. Nanotechnology is going to revolutionize robotics in ways that we can't even imagine. When those two things combine, nanotechnology and robotics, it's gonna be beyond science fiction at that point. So, so again, to summarize, I don't believe that machines, artificial intelligence, robots will ever be able to have innate consciousness. They will have to be programmed. They will have to be told what to do, and will operate within the schematics that are created for them. They'll be able to improve on those things. They'll be able to elaborate, but consciousness is not a function of computational power.
Well said, Tim. And man, this is very powerful. This is one of the most bone chilling, and I do a lot of interviews. This is one of the most bone chilling interviews I've done in a while.
Because it's real, because we're talking about things that are already unfolding, and it's easy
I don't even know what to say,
trajectory. It's easy to plot the trajectory. And what I find to be most fascinating is that the book of Revelation, John, the Apostle John on the island of Patmos in the 1st century, he was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and he was given this information. These things were revealed to him in a cryptic way, in symbolism and metaphor, but it overlays what's happening. It overlays the trajectory of posthumanism, and that is to me most astounding. That's the reason why I wrote the book Birthright: The Coming Posthuman Apocalypse and the Usurpation of Adam's Dominion on Planet Earth. You can overlay the biblical narrative with the things that are happening and see that these things were predicted in advance, because there is an impetus behind everything that's happening. It's not money and it's not power. It is nothing less than open war with the Creator himself. That is the impetus. That is what is pushing all this forward. That alone is the end game. It is to make war with the kingdom of heaven, open war, kinetic war, and this has to do with this character who the Bible, who the scriptures ambiguously designate as the dragon, who's leading humanity and post-humanity, who's leading humanity into post-humanity, and then post-humanity into open war with the Son of God and the kingdom of heaven. And it is a kinetic war. It is a technological war. And that is the end game. And so I am not a pessimist, because I know who wins that war ultimately. And so I'm not a pessimist at all. I'm a realist, and I understand where things are going. And I think that for people listening to this, the big question throbbing in their mind might be, let's say, how then should we live? Let me say that again. The question throbbing in people's minds in response to the things that we've been talking about is, how then should we live? Well, I would say, and I always say, you must comprehend the gospel of Christ and understand and teach your children the importance of remaining human as all of this unfolds, of preserving your humanity. It's the two questions. What is the purpose of mankind, and is our humanity worth preserving? You have to understand the purpose and why we should preserve our humanity. And that is the most important thing that anybody can do at this juncture. Because those two questions, what does it mean to human? Let me say it more succinctly. This is actually the way I say it in my presentations. What does it mean to be a human being? And is our humanity worth preserving? Both of those questions are answered within the biblical narrative in a way that no other religious texts, no other manuscript provides the succinct and let's say elegant answer to those questions, like the Hebrew Scriptures, like the Bible.
And can you do another 30 minutes or
Sure.
so? And some people are probably that hear that it like, man, like we still have another 30 minutes with Timothy Alberino. Like, because man, you've been on fire, man. And one thing I've noticed with a lot of your interviews, you start off, you know, kind of how I do in a lot of my interviews. Start off just casually, just, you know, discussing whatever your material, the responding to the questions being asked or whatever. But man, I've noticed as of late, especially within this interview, man, you've gotten fired up. Why? Before we go a little bit further, why do you get fired up? Like, what is it? Well, what's that spark? What's that drive that keeps you?
You know, I think the short answer is because this is what I was created to do, and I'm fulfilling my function, my purpose in articulating for people what's coming and where we are and where we're going. And this story that we're caught up in, you know, it's like C.S. Lewis said that the biblical narrative is an epic myth that just so happens to be true. And it's the unfolding of this narrative that gets me excited and animates me and motivates me, because we are entering into a period of time that is almost totally unprecedented in human history. And I'm not a Luddite. I don't believe that technology is bad at all. I believe that it takes great wisdom. It takes great wisdom and virtue to properly develop and constrain technology so that it is beneficial to humanity. And we are not a people of great wisdom and virtue. We are a people
That has devolved.
we are a people who are degenerate and have become foolish and reprobate in our minds, generally speaking. And when you put technology into the hands of the unrighteous, it's like putting lighters in the hands of toddlers and setting them free in a dry field. And that's where we are. And it is so apparent to me that society is becoming increasingly reprobate and degenerate at the same time that technology is accelerating. That is a bad combination. As I said, it takes an incredible amount of foresight and wisdom and virtue to develop technology in a responsible way. and that's not what's happening. And so it can only lead to disaster. Um, and it takes an exceptional amount of wisdom and virtue to be a self-governed society. And this is what the founding fathers knew. And that's why our society is disintegrating, because we are no longer a virtuous people. And we're very selfish, self-centered, degenerate generation.
I agree. I
And
totally agree.
so we ruin everything we touch. We ruin everything we touch because we only think about ourselves. We only think about the present. We have no desire um, to preserve society for future generations. We don't think about posterity because we've become exceedingly self-centered, and technology is just making us increasingly so, especially social media.
Mhm.
And so it's a very sad situation, and um and unfortunately I don't see it improving in terms of the general virtue, the virtue of the general public, let's say. um and so to me that's a very bleak situation, because I know that my children are going to grow up in a society that is that is insane, and that has access to incredibly dangerous technology. And
I'm terrified, man. I'm terrified. I have my wife is in the bedroom with our 4-month-old child. I'm terrified. You know what I mean?
and because you're sensible. And if we were a virtuous people, and we had virtuous leaders, and we had virtuous scientists, and we had virtuous um, technologists, then it would be a different situation. But we are becoming, not only are we becoming increasingly degenerate, we're becoming increasingly stupid. And
Each generation is a byproduct of the previous generation. We have to be
and
better than the previous, and that's how the wheel will keep on. But it's not. Each generation continually gets worse. You can
and
go,
we are
you know,
we are continually offshoring our intelligence to computers, to AI.
something.
We're outsourcing human creativity and intelligence to artificial intelligence increasingly. And so what happens is we our brains um, gradually begin to decrease in capability. It's just like if you learn a language and you are living in a culture where they speak this foreign language, and you're constantly using it, you're going to become better and better, more proficient at that language. But as soon as you divorce yourself from that culture and you're no longer practicing that language, you will forget it. And it's the same thing with the human brain. The more we outsource our intelligence to AI, to computers, the less capable our brains will become, and those of our children. And that's why you have something, for example, called TikTok brain, which is a real thing. TikTok brain is young people are losing the ability to engage with any content that's longer than 30 seconds or something like that. It's
They want
TikTok.
everything. They want everything now, fast, quick.
It's instantaneous gratification. And so if you have a teenager and you say, sit down and watch this hour-long documentary that's slow and packed with information, they can't do it. They literally can't do it. Their brains can't process information like that
What are you
anymore.
talking about, Tim? You're a boomer. What are you talking about?
It's like fast food, it's like fast food for the brain. And of course TikTok is weaponized to do this. Um, and so it only makes sense that we were going to have to continue to, as I said, to outsource our cerebral capacity to artificial intelligence, because we're not the human beings we used to be. And I read about this in the book. We are not experiencing an evolutionary ascent, Darwinian evolutionary ascent. What we've been experiencing for thousands of years is devolution, degeneration. And we talk about all the artificial intelligence and all of the things that are coming in regard to the biotechnological revolution that's unfolding. But let's not forget that as all of this is unfolding, that the human biology is gradually degrading. We're degenerating, not just in a moral sense, but in a physical sense, in a biological sense. We're degenerating. By the year 2020, by the year 2045, the human sperm count is going to zero. And unfortunately, lots of people watching this are going to throw out everything I've just said because I made some sort of a satanic symbol here. It's just zero, folks. The human sperm count is going to go to zero by 2045. And so human beings are going to become reproductively inviable. You see, all of this is happening. It's not incidental. None of this is incidental. None of this is happenstance. None of this is coincidence. It's being coordinated like a theatrical play.
Mm-hmm.
Just when we're running out of our genetic rope, so to speak, for reproduction, what do we have? Artificial wombs. Artificial wombs are coming. So it's coordinated, and it's amazing to watch unfold. It really is. It's astounding.
I meant to ask you this a while ago when we was talking about it. But I didn't want to cut you off because you was on fire, man. So do you think that the reason for this great technological leap the past, I guess, 100 years is due to this unseen shadow force that manipulates society from the shadows? And if so, maybe one reason this shadow force, you could call it whatever you want, extraterrestrials, demonic, demon, whatever it is possibly helping with this burst in technologies because this shadow force needs us to be their worker bees. Let me finish this real quick. Be their worker bees and work as a collective so that one day we can eventually merge with the machines and help this shadow force finally have the technology to leave this prison planet. And the reason for them wanting us to merge with the transhuman artificial intelligence is so that we can survive in space and be their slaves off planet. And if we merge with the machines, we'll be the perfect slave species that can survive the vastness of space.
I would say that without question, we're being influenced and directed by non-human extraterrestrial forces. And the dragon and his angels are non-human extraterrestrial forces, by the way. And there's different factions involved, but so yes, to the first part of your question. But the goal of posthumanism, in my estimation, from a theological perspective, is not merely to create a slave populace. It's to eradicate the offspring of Adam and Eve. And, I often reference the Chronicles of Narnia. If you recall the Chronicles of Narnia, the rightful rulers of Narnia were who? The sons and daughters of Adam and Eve. And the objective was to keep them in that case, in the Chronicles of Narnia, was to keep them from occupying their thrones. And this, in the reality that we're living in, it's to dethrone them, to usurp the dominion of Adam and Eve on earth.
I've shown this a few times. It's a Time magazine from 1999. The future of medicine. Look at that. Look at this. Look at the symbolism there.
The Caduceus.
Yes, with a reptilian snake.
Right. Because the future of medicine is genetic primarily, until we develop nanotechnology, which is coming very, very soon. And of course, nanotechnology is miniature robots the size of cells that will patrol your body and do different things. They'll function like T cells, for example, and eradicate cancer. They'll do all different kinds of things. But
that's how they're going to sell it to us, though, Tim. That's how they're going to sell it to us.
Well, when you put technology into your body, you have to understand that just like your computer, that technology can be hacked, for one thing.
Yep.
And if it can be used to do something good, it can also be used to do something bad. And so there's going to be a lot of medical breakthroughs that we're going to have to think long and hard about whether or not it's worth. If we, let's say, if there's a genetic cure for cancer, well, we're going to have to be very well educated to navigate that, because if it's a human to human genetic therapy, in other words, you're taking the 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 error in the human genome that's causing cancer, so there be some faulty genes, and you're replacing them with the correct human genes, gene therapy, human to human gene therapy, then I would say that's perfectly fine, because you're taking human genetic information that is correct and replacing the incorrect information in the human genome. So you're restoring the genome with the correct information from the functional human genes. That to me is a very good technology. It's good science. It does not cross the boundaries of interspecies genetics or something like that, but it will evolve very quickly into taking genes from other animals, from other creatures, and splicing them into the human genome, not just to cure cancer, not just to cure heart disease, but to give human beings extra human capabilities. And there's going to be a whole market for that in the future, by the way. And the genetic revolution hasn't even really gotten going yet. We're doing gene therapy. We've got the mRNA technology that we're using, which is very dangerous. It could be beneficial. It could be beneficial if it were in the right hands and being deployed properly, but it's not. And I doubt that really any of these technologies are ever going to be developed responsibly, because the driving force right now is profit and control, profit and power.
Uh-huh.
And as long as those two things are the driving force behind the development of these biotechnologies, they're going to be suspect. And so we're going to have to be very well educated, because I don't want people out there resisting gene therapy. If it's a snippet of human genetic code that corrects that same area in the genome um, that's delinquent, that's malfunctioning, then you're just taking good human DNA and replacing the bad DNA, right? And that is human to human genetic gene therapy, which I think is very good technology and is much better, for example, than chemotherapy. So people need to become aware of these technologies and draw their lines in the sand, and have an understanding of what is transgressing, for example, the boundaries between human and non-human. I, for example, will never interface with technology through my cerebral cortex. I'm not going to put that technology into my brain, because it goes two ways. It goes both ways. It doesn't just go from your brain accessing the internet. It goes from the internet accessing your brain. And so those kind of invasive cybernetic technologies are dangerous. I don't think there's anything redeeming about them. They're too dangerous for the human species to wield. And I understand Elon Musk's I understand his desire to make sure that human beings remain relevant and can compete with artificial intelligence. I totally get it. But the risks outweigh the benefits.
Exactly. And I want to bring up the alien rays for a second, and give me about a minute, Duke, because I wrote this down preparing for this interview. So I interviewed Daryl Sims, aka the Alien Hunter, whom I've interviewed a few times and once in person. Daryl Sims, at a conference, I believe it was in Houston. But he talks about the Greys and their agenda here on Earth, you know, but he's mentioned many times on both interviews, once in person and once over just a podcast like this, that the Greys are made, hatched, cloned, and manufactured for the purpose. So here's my statement and or question. And one of the things within this statement slash question you've kind of already explained, but here it goes. So, what's your thoughts on all of that? What Daryl Sims states: Greys are made, hatched, cloned, and manufactured for the purpose. So, what's your thoughts on all that, Timothy? And if what Daryl Sims is discussing about the Greys being made, hatched, cloned, and manufactured is true, do you think that the Greys were possibly the first push in trying to steer humanity in this human 2.0 technological dystopian future nightmare agenda? I mean, they do act very robotic in nature. So, with all that being said, do you think that the Greys are being phased out, for a lack of a better phrase? Not saying that they are not still being used or utilized, but maybe on one level, they may be getting phased out because they do not have a soul for this dystopian AI nightmare to come into fruition. The soul needs to be utilized as a possible battery source for whenever the time comes for the one for the 100% human singularity integration with artificial intelligence. The endgame agenda in the one percenters dystopian nightmare toolbox needs that integration with the human soul with the machines. I know you already talked about that. And maybe this soul connection is why the Greys may possibly be in this phasing out as we speak. What's your thoughts on all that?
Well, there's a lot there. In the beginning, I would say that your first question, do I agree with Mr. Sims' evaluation of the Greys being manufactured? Yes, I do. I think that the Greys are some kind of biological drone. I don't think they're artificial intelligence. I think that they're cloned. I think that they are manufactured in the sense that there's genetic engineering, that they were created to do what they do. In regard to the question about the soul, I don't know. I don't think so. I think that the objective of the Greys is very clear from the abduction material. The objection of the Greys, and remember that the little Greys are just, as you said, the worker bees. They're the workforce. I believe that the intrinsic, the innate species, biological species, are the insectilids who manage the abduction program. That's the real species, and that they created the Greys, or that they engineered the Greys, rather, to perform a particular function. And the function of the Greys, the little guys with the bulbous heads and the black almond-shaped eyes, their function is to perform the menial tasks in the abduction phenomenon, to retrieve abductees, process them, to implant the hybrids in the wombs, to extract the semen, to extract the fetuses, to gestate the fetuses in the gestation tanks, and to raise them, and all of the things that are a part of the abduction phenomenon, the program. And what is the program? The program is the production of human alien hybrids that are indistinguishable from regular human beings. That's what they've been working toward. They've been perfecting the hybrid, and I'm drawing heavily from Dr. Jacobs' work here, and in his terms, they have been creating what he calls a hybrid, a near perfect alien human hybrid, again, practically indistinguishable from human beings. And so I think that the agenda and purpose of the Greys is clear, and I would agree with Jacob's assessment that their primary purpose, their end goal, is planetary acquisition, but they're doing it by stealth. It's conquest by stealth. It's not overt, it's covert. And what is the purpose of these hybrids, of these advanced alien human hybrids? Are they supposed to integrate into society, into the upper echelons of society? Are they supposed to rise in the ranks of the militaries of the earth? Are they supposed to rise in the political arena and become the leaders of nations? Maybe, probably, possibly. But I think that the the singular objective of the Greys is planetary acquisition, and that is what the abduction program is about. They are the antithesis of the Borg from Star Trek. The Borg from Star Trek, obviously a fictional faction, the Borg from Star Trek uh, assimilate other cultures into their collective. The Greys do the antithesis. The Greys assimilate themselves into cultures and take them over covertly from within, without firing a shot, so to speak. And it's a much more ingenious and insidious modus operandi. And so I don't know that I would go beyond speculating. I don't think I would speculate beyond that, because there's no evidence that the Greys are interested in souls. Now, I will say this. The late Dr. Carla Turner wrote extensively about a device that showed up in a lot of the abductions interviews that she conducted. It's a black box. You've probably heard this, that sometimes is positioned at the top of an abductee's head as they're laying prone on the table, on their back. And the abductee will often describe the sensation of being sucked out of their body, like their consciousness being drawn out of the body, and had something to do with the black box, and then a new body being brought in, a clone body, and then their consciousness going back into that body. So, have the Greys develop technology to be able to extract human consciousness, whatever that is, the human soul, from the body and place it into a new body? I don't know. There is interesting, there are interesting anecdotes, stories from the abduction material about this black box device and the transferring of souls. So I don't know as it pertains to Greys and their interest in the human soul. I think it's quite clear that the Greys have perfected cloning and genetic engineering. And so does that also mean that they can extract that element, that conscious element in the human body, extract it, hold it, and then reinsert it? I suspect that they may be able to do that, but I'm not sure what purpose there would be beyond using that technology for clones.
Maybe because they're stuck within in their whatever dimension they are in, and they can't progress as a extraterrestrial species.
I don't think so, because the whole objective here, everything that's happening within the abduction phenomena is in service to the production of advanced human alien hybrids, or alien human hybrids. That seems to be the primary overarching goal. I don't see that the insectoids, for example, which are the primary species here involved, I don't see some kind of an agenda to attain a soul for themselves or something like that. That's all rank speculation. Mm-hmm. When you talk about the soul and consciousness, you are in very murky waters. We don't understand consciousness at all. We don't understand consciousness at all. No. And so when we talk about these things, it's all rank speculation, which is perfectly fine. But we know what the Greys are actually doing. They're creating human alien hybrids. For what purpose? Again, I would concur with Dr. Jacobs, planetary acquisition. But beyond that, who knows what else they're doing or why? But again, keep in mind that the little Greys are not the native species. It's the insectoids. Those are the native species, or at least appear to be the native species.
And we will end on this final quote I pulled from your book, and question I have after this quote. Well, this will be where we end this discussion for this time, Timothy. This was from, I got it wrote down on this one. This is from your book, Birthright. The posthuman paradigm. Aside from modifying the genes of human embryos, scientists all over the world have been creating genetic chimeras by blending the DNA of various species. In 2011, the Daily Mail reported that British scientists had secretly created more than 150 human animal hybrid embryos. The research was made possible by the Human Fertilization Embryology Act passed in 2008, which legalized the creation of a variety of hybrids, including an animal egg fertilized by human sperm, hybrids in which human nucleus is implanted into an animal cell, and chimeras in which human cells are mixed with animal embryos. And I love your book, by the way. I need to get the physical copy. But my question will go along with that quote from your book. And this will end in this discussion with your thoughts. Do you think that these alien greys and possibly other alien species are actually chimeras genetically modified in a lab by these post-human dystopian elites? And like I mentioned before, with Daryl Sims talking about it, also saying that they are hatched, cloned, and made and manufactured. Also, if most of the alien species, including the greys, are a form of these elites' experiments, are they chimeras that are mixed with the genetic material from us humans? Almost like a genetic experiment that is working to push society towards a transhuman alien hybrid future.
No, I don't think we have anything to do with the Greys. The Greys are created, in my estimation, by the insectolins, or in service of the abduction program, of the hybridization program. That's what the Greys were created to do. Is it possible that the Greys are a native species themselves? It's possible, but it appears that they're clones for several reasons, and created by the insectolins, not created by human beings. We do not have. I don't believe that the U.S. government, the CIA or something, has been perpetrating the abduction phenomenon. I think that's a ludicrous idea for many reasons. It's an illogical proposition. Clearly, this is extraterrestrial technology, and these are extraterrestrial entities. Now, might they be from the inner Earth? I suppose that's a possibility. But if they're from the inner Earth, couldn't they just as easily be from the interior of Mars?
Right.
So, again, I believe that the purpose and the function of the Greys is apparent. It's apparent in the abduction literature.
Well said, man. Tell you what, Timothy, mine is blown. Very fascinating discussion. I have to get you back on, hopefully, because I still have a lot of notes that didn't make this discussion. Maybe this will be part one of the discussion. But yeah, this was very powerful, and hopefully a lot of people will get a lot from this interview, and people that don't even know who you are will start following you because your research is very vital. You are a very powerful researcher with a great insight to how where we're going, our past, present, and future. This dystopian nightmare that we're living in. But one last time, go ahead and throw all your stuff out there, your links, books, and do you have any future projects coming down the pipe?
Social media, Timothy Alberino. YouTube, Timothy Alberino. The book, Birthright, Amazon.com, Walmart.com, BarnesandNobles.com. And the website is timothyalberino.com.
What about conferences or anything like that coming up?
Well, I have a trip to Peru in June that's sold out within 2 days. But I am right now in the process of developing another trip or a couple other trips to different places, expeditions to interesting places, megaliths, ancient ruins, stuff like that. Or even considering like summits taking place in different places, possibly one here in Bozeman, Montana. So the best way to stay abreast with all of that is to subscribe to my mailing list on my website. If you're having a problem subscribing, send me an email and I will manually subscribe you. And also tracking me with me on YouTube and social media. You'll get updates about these things, especially YouTube.
And also, you're talking about email. whenever I sent that interview request a while back, it was in my spam folder. Your reply was.
Yeah, that's
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, but I think that's intentional.
I
I don't
don't know. It's a
I
problem.
can't
And I
explain
got
that, but
well, there's some things too that I think I can do on my end to try and to prevent my emails going to people's spam, but that is an ongoing problem. So
it's not just on your end, it's my end, and a lot of people in this field. I don't know. Maybe I'm just reaching for something that's not there. But anyways, but Tim, thank you very much, man. It's a treat, honor, a privilege.
my pleasure.